class. It's Professor Streeter, and in this video we're going to talk about hedonism. That's our first big idea of the semester, thinking about the nature of the good life and what the hedonist has to say about that. Many of you have been writing about this in your posts already online on the discussion forum. And so as we work through this slideshow that I've shared with you, think about these questions. Are you a hedonist? What does it mean to be a hedonist? What does the hedonist get right about the nature of the good life and what we value in life? What does the hedonist maybe misdescribe or leave out from your perspective? And do you approach life hedonistically, right? Does the hedonist capture your sense of what makes life good? Why or why not? Those are questions to consider as you read and as we work through this slideshow. All right, let me put myself in the corner and begin. So this is the week 2. We're thinking about the good life. Our first week thinking about that together. And here's a question that I had you write about from last week's reading. And many of you mentioned this in your posts. The Appia piece about what future societies will condemn us for. As we move through the semester, keep track of this in your notes. What do you think is the biggest ethical challenge or crisis or issue that we face as a society? Write that in your notes. Share it with the class if you feel so inclined. I want to get this in your head early and the gears turning early, because your second essay assignment will be a topic of your own choosing, where you write about something that matters to you and an ethical issue or crisis or problem that you want to work through. And you have a long time to think about that, but the sooner you start thinking about that, the better. So keep track of this, of how you think about this and what kinds of issues you might want to write about for your second essay. Okay? But here's our question for this week. What's the good we're seeking in life? We raised it last week, but we're focusing on it more directly this week. Is it happiness? That's one answer to the question. We're all seeking happiness. Is that the good or the highest good or the only intrinsic good that we seek in life? Is that what really matters? Is that what it's all about in the end, happiness? That's our framing question for this week. It's an ethical question. And I had you read the piece by Nozick on the experience machine. Here's a longer quote from his book, The Examined Life, where that example comes from. So he wrote this in 1989, a book called The Examined Life. And in his chapter on happiness, he raises the thought experiment, or he constructs the thought experiment that you looked at, the experience machine. But here's something he says in that chapter. Some theorists, right? Some of us have claimed that happiness is the only important thing in life. All that should matter to a person, they say, is being happy. The sole standard for assessing a life is the amount or quantity of happiness it contains. That's an example of something that a hedonist would say, right? So here Nozick is starting off with an expression of the hedonist idea that happiness is the only important thing in life. He is raising questions about that thesis in his chapter on happiness, and the experience machine is one way to do that. But he points to something he calls ironic. It's ironic that making this exclusive claim for happiness distorts the flavor of what happy moments are like. So already we see some criticism of the idea that happiness is the only important thing in life. Because he's trying to get you to think about moments when you're happy. In those moments, almost everything seems wonderful, right? The way the sun shines, the way that a person looks, the way the water glistens on the river. When you're happy, everything seems wonderful. It's kind of openness to the world. Right? Think about what happiness is. That's part of our task this semester, at the beginning of the semester, to think about the nature of happiness. What is it that we're seeking? Of course, we're all seeking happiness. But is it the only important thing in life? And what is it that we're really seeking when we seek happiness? That's our question. Well, here he's describing it as a kind of openness, a generosity of spirit, a width of appreciation. You appreciate more when you're happy. You feel more generous. It gets warped, he thinks, and constricted by the claim that only happiness matters. When we're happy, it seems like everything matters. Everything has value. Everything is beautiful. And the claim that happiness is the only thing that matters, ironically, seems to distort or misdescribe or misunderstand something about the nature of happiness and what it's like to be in that open state of mind that we call happiness. So as he says, happiness can be precious, perhaps even preeminent. Maybe it's one of the most important things that we seek, but it's not the only important thing that we desire. It's not the only thing that makes life good. At least that's, I think, Nozick's suggestion. And if you read The Experience Machine and thought about it, he draws a similar conclusion there. So that's a starting point, thinking about Nozick. But here's his question, right? And here's our question for the week. If the good life, in the discussion forum, if the good life is what you seek, should you plug into the experience machine? Where the experience machine, leave aside all the logistics of it, is a machine that is programmed to give you all the experiences that you desire, whatever those experiences are. And you can come out periodically and reprogram it, he points out. But when you're inside the machine, you're not aware of anything else than what you're experiencing in the machine. So that's your life, right? The virtual life inside the machine becomes your life. And you forget the life that you had before. So the question is, right, should you trade in the life that you have now for a virtual life plugged into a machine where you get to have all the experiences that you desire? Would that make your life good? Is that the good that you're seeking? Just having all of the experiences that you desire. So this raises a question: how do you picture the good life, right? How do you picture what it means to have a good life, right? If you want to know whether plugging into the machine would make your life good, you've got to have a view about what the good life is, a picture of it. So I've shared some pictures. I don't know, here you are out at a concert listening to your favorite music, dancing, celebrating life at a concert, a live concert. I don't know, that's an image of what the good is that you're seeking. You're seeking something like that, right? That's a way to live, to kind of find experiences like that in your life. Here's an image of people volunteering at a soup kitchen, right? Engaged in a community. Is that the picture that you have of the good life? Engaged in activities like that. Here's a picture of a group of people living at an influencer house in Los Angeles, right? The social media influencer, right? That's a way of life now, right? Is that the life that you're seeking, or something along those lines, right? Think about how you picture the good life. Here's some guys working in a garden together, getting their hands dirty, okay? Growing lettuce, growing food, growing your own food, a self-sustaining life, right? Part of a community. Here is a life this is a picture of an Amish farm, right? So a very traditional life in which a simple life, again, self-sustaining, but structured around religious beliefs and a very traditional way of living, okay? Do you picture something like getting, off the grid, right? Getting away from the city out into the country and living a simple life. And practicing traditional community values, or embodying traditional community values. Is that what you picture? Think about individuals, the life of celebrity, Beyonce, the life of a celebrity. Is that the good that you're seeking? Fame. Here is the work of a politician, right? Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, right? A powerful, influential politician fighting for social justice. Is that the life? Is that the good life that you're seeking? Here's just a guy sitting at home doing what he wants, right? The life of the bachelor, the loner, right? An image one image, I guess, of freedom, no responsibilities, right? You're only responsible to yourself, right? The biggest choice you make in the morning is what cereal to eat and what program to put on TV. Or is life about family, right? Responsibilities to your family, right? Or is that the good life that you're seeking? A family life. Okay, those are just a bunch of pictures. How do you picture the good life? Hedonism is a view about that. It's a theory about what has value and what makes life go well. Okay? And here's the basic idea. Pleasure is the highest good that we seek. That's what we're seeking, pleasure. Or in Mill's terms, happiness. And he measures happiness in terms of pleasure, right? The basic way of measuring the quality of a person's life is in terms of how much he enjoys that life. The more a person enjoys the life, right, the better the life is, right? the more the person is miserable, the worse their life is, right? So that's a basic idea about how to measure the quality or the goodness of a person's life. And that's the hedonistic idea, that everything that we do, right, is for the sake of pleasure or for the sake of happiness. Of course, we desire many things, but the reason why we desire those things is because they contribute to pleasure or happiness in some way. That's the hedonist idea. So notice, right, to qualify, the hedonist is not saying that pleasure or happiness are the only things that matter to us. There are many goods that we seek, okay? Recognition from others, freedom, some measure of freedom, okay? Maybe fame, money. Think about all the things we seek. But what makes them good is that they contribute to happiness in some way. If they didn't, then they wouldn't be good. Right? The only thing that really matters then is happiness. Okay? It's the only thing that is intrinsically good, good for its own sake. That's the claim. So here we have an important distinction. And this video is going to become 2 parts because I'm running out of time. But a really important distinction that Schaefer-Landau points to in the beginning of chapter 1. The difference between 2 types of goods. Instrumental and intrinsic. So something is instrumentally good, like money, its goodness consists in what it brings about, right? It's an instrument or a means to something else. So we desire it, we desire money as a means to some other end, something that we want to do with money, right? We don't desire money for its own sake, right? We consider money good instrumentally because it helps us do other things that we think are good, okay? That's contrasted with something that has intrinsic value, something that wears its value on its sleeve, that has its value in its own right or for its own sake. Okay? Something is intrinsically valuable just in case we desire it as an end in itself or for its own sake. So the hedonist wants to say that pleasure and happiness are the only things that have intrinsic value. Everything else, like money, which has instrumental value, we desire for the sake of happiness or pleasure. Okay? So I've given an example of an activity. How do you think about the difference between instrumental and intrinsic value? Here's my example of something I desire, that I like doing, running. I value it. But you can think about the question, why do you value it? How do you value it? Do you value it instrumentally or intrinsically? Okay, well, that depends on how you answer a question like this. Like, suppose someone asks you, why do you like running? What's it good for? And I answer, well, it helps me sleep better at night. If that's my sincere answer. So there I'm saying that I value running, jogging, whatever you call it, and other forms of physical exercise as a means to better sleep. I get up in the morning and run 5 miles so that I will sleep well at night. The running is not what I desire for its own sake. What I desire for its own sake in this case is sleeping well at night. So in this case, running has merely instrumental value for me. I don't value it for its own sake. But look, if that's my answer to the initial question, someone can now ask a follow-up question. Why do you want a good night's sleep? What's it good for? Right? So that's the value question. That's the good question. The question about the good. Like, what's it good for? What are you really seeking when you're seeking a good night's sleep? This is the moment of ethical reflection that I'm trying to encourage you to do in this class, to raise this kind of question for yourself. So is it good for its own sake, or is it good just as a means to some other end? Right? Sleeping. And the conversation can go in many directions from there. Okay? But notice I could also imagine the conversation, the same question, what's running good for? I could imagine myself saying, I love running itself. It makes my life better. Getting up in the morning and running 5 miles all by itself makes my life better. And there I'm treating running as an intrinsic good. Okay? But if that's where I want to go, I have to be able to explain how running 5 miles in the morning all by itself makes my life good. What's intrinsically good about it? Right? How does that all by itself make your life better? So and if I can't answer that question, I haven't really explained what's intrinsically valuable about running. Okay, so let's pause here. That's the first sort of step in thinking about the thesis of hedonism, the distinction between instrumental and intrinsic value. And the hedonist wants to say that happiness and pleasure are the only things that have intrinsic value, the only thing that is valued for its own sake, the only thing that all by itself makes your life better. So think about that for a while. Okay, that's all for now. Bye.